and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Boss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today as we're going to be speaking about something rather important: the security of the United States, the safety of Europe, and of course, the status of our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel. Yes, in other words, I want to talk about the Iran nuclear deal, something that is ongoing as we speak. Negotiations are happening right now, and this has been something that's been going on for more than 6 years. And the question is this in the best interest of the United States and the world? Will this create more peace? Well, we're going to take a look at that to give you an honest and realistic look at this that the mainstream media really wants to avoid even trying to discuss. But before we get started, we do want to mention that if this is the first time that you're seeing our channel, we want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out to hear your chats, your tweets, even your phone calls from anywhere in the world to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all. We reach out because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to speak. It is unalienable, and that is something that belongs to everyone in the world, regardless of what your government may think, what the internet overlords may think. You have a right to speak, and we want to hear your voice. And so we hope you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to share your voice with us about these important issues. We look forward to it. Now, to address the issue for today and the conversation that isn't happening, the conversation that really needs to happen, which is the Iran nuclear deal. This is something that was going on since 2013. But most importantly, in the last 6 years, with 3 separate presidents, that's President Obama, President Trump, and the Biden administration, we have seen this deal take different outlooks, different promises to the American public, and different reporting on what it is actually accomplishing. And this is going to be important for 2022, not just for the United States, but also for our greatest ally in the Middle East, our only ally in the Middle East, Israel. It's going to be very important for Europe and looking at our allies there, both because of immigration and also because of safety concerns. So let's try and understand what is actually happened with the Iran nuclear deal and what will happen with it going forward. To do that, let's start off, first of all, by taking a step back in time, because the major mainstream media is guaranteed, they are hoping and praying you don't remember. So let's take a look back, because we do remember. In fact, we recall that we were speaking about this in April 21st of 2015. The Obama administration on April 2nd, 2015, announced that they had come to an agreement with Iran, and that agreement would take force on June 30th of 2015. This was the Iran nuclear deal. It encompassed a couple of different things. Iran would promise not to make a nuclear weapon, something that they have been developing and working on for decades, and that they would stop the production or the research into creating a nuclear weapon. And in exchange for that one concession, the United States would remove all sanctions on Israel. That's $450 billion worth of sanctions that were preventing Iran from being able to expand global terror and to commit more oppression on its own people at the time. So we saw that in November of 2013, it's very important to understand that as these discussions were going on, before the deal was made, in the discussions about the deal, on November 13th, the then Iranian president Hassan Rouhani said, "Let anyone make his own reading, but this right is clearly stated in the text of the agreement that Iran can continue its enrichment And I announce to our people that our enrichment activities will continue as before. In 2013, while there was negotiations for the Iran nuclear deal, Iran made it absolutely clear they plan to continue to approach, to be able to create nuclear weapons. Nothing was going to stop them. They went on to say in 2015, under the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, a name you will hear again in this conversation today, he stated, "We will continue enriching, we will continue research and development." So even as the Obama administration in 2015 were taking a bow and making the claim that they had made the Iran nuclear deal and that there would be more global peace, we had Iran saying, no, we're still going to make a nuclear weapon. We're still going to go forward. We're just taking the money from the United States. That's got to be troubling to people. It should also be troubling to also understand when we look at North Korea, in which many of the same kinds of deals were made, and yet what happened there? It was in 1985 that North Korea joined the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. In 1994, North Korea signed the agreed framework in Geneva. In 1998, North Korea conducted long-range missile tests. And by 2002, North Korea admitted they had violated the Geneva framework and secretly enriched uranium. It was followed up in a year later, in 2013, North Korea claimed to be a nuclear power at that time. All of that happened after multiple rounds of talks with many nations involved, inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, serious violations of all the agreements that were made with various nations, including the United States. And the world was watching North Korea while all of this was happening. These are the very same things we are being promised with Iran, that we will watch them very carefully, that the International Atomic Energy Agency will do inspections and keep an eye on what they're doing, and that we have many talks involved to guarantee that Iran won't cheat. And yet none of that stopped North Korea. And we have no reason to believe that any of this would stop Iran, even as Iran in 2013 and 2015, and since that time, have told us they will make a nuclear bomb. They are not going to stop. They have never, ever said that they won't make a nuclear weapon. That's important to understand. Now, in 2016, something else that was very important was stated. Only 6 months after the deal had been signed and was in effect, and the United States was releasing $450 billion to Iran. About $150 billion in cash was delivered in planes to Iran for this nuclear deal. And it was in January of 2016 that then Secretary John Kerry admitted and stated on CNBC the following statement, quote, "I think that some of it will end up in the hands of the IRGC or other entities, some of which are labeled terrorists." He's speaking specifically about the provision to provide over $150 billion in funds that were frozen by international banks, that sanctions have prevented Iran from being able to touch. Over $150 billion we're speaking there. And the IRGC is Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is identified by multiple nations as a terrorist organization, that they train and enable terrorism on a global scale. And John Kerry has just admitted in January of 2016 to CNBC and the world that the United States has just funded global terror, that we have enabled more global terror through Iran because of the Iran nuclear deal. That flies in the face of what we have been told would be its number one provision to create more peace in the world. And it's so bad that the then CIA director, John Brennan, in speaking about the Iran nuclear deal, had to state, quote, Kerry and crew left a loophole a mile wide when they effectively allowed Iran to conduct all the illicit work it wants outside of Iran in countries like North Korea or perhaps Sudan. So the director of the CIA, in looking at what the Iran nuclear deal actually did, not the promises, not what was being promoted by the mainstream media, but looking at the actual factual results, in only 6 months was able to say that this deal enabled more terror in the world. It created more problems than it not existing. That has to be troubling, especially when we then look in 2016, June of 2016, Hezbollah and its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, stated, quote, we are open about the facts that Hezbollah's budget, its income, its expenses, everything it eats and drinks, its weapons and rockets are from the Islamic Republic of Iran. So again, we are being told by another international terrorist organization that they are being funded by Iran. And Iran has just received $150 billion from the United States because of the sanctions that were lifted. And we have been told by the CIA and the then Secretary of State under the Obama administration that terrorism would increase because of the Iran nuclear deal. These are incredibly important facts that we have to look at. We have been told by our intelligence agencies, by individuals in charge of our state government, that individuals around the world are knowing that Iran has been able to increase the net global terror in the world. Terrorism increased because of the Iran nuclear deal. This is a reality. This isn't our guess. This isn't a supposition. This is factual. This happened in our past. This was the result of the Iran nuclear deal. It is a reality that we all have to understand. It is something that the mainstream media never wants to tell you and have always avoided, but it is the facts. We are quoting from the mainstream news media and these international terrorist organizations. So that's the reality. I understand what the hope was, but that's the reality of what is the Iran nuclear deal. It is an increase in global terror with no guarantee of stopping Iran from creating a nuclear weapon, which they are dead set in doing because they want to destroy all of America. They want to destroy all of Israel, and they want to destroy any nation and any country that does not believe exactly what the Ayatollah tells them to believe. These are facts. They are indisputable and they are irrefutable. Now, in 2018, there was a change in our government, of course, after the 2016 presidential election. President Trump, a long-term opponent of the Iran nuclear deal, stepped forward and he made a decision. He decided to take the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal. As reported by the BBC in May 9th of 2018, Trump pulls out of the Iran nuclear deal. He's breaking with the U.S. allies. And Trump stated that the deal only limited Iran's nuclear activities for a fixed period. This is true. That the deal had failed to stop the development of ballistic missiles. This is true. And had handed Iran $100 billion, actually more, that it used as a slush fund for weapons, terror, and oppression across the Middle East. This is true. So, just looking at this, the deal was a short-term effort. It was a stopgap measure to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, which Iran did not accept as part of the terms of the deal. Not in 2013, not in 2015, not even after President Obama went on international news media and said that Iran was now stopped from getting a nuclear weapon, and Iran turned around and said, no, that's not true, and that they were going to make a nuclear weapon even with the deal in place. As bad as that is, it also allowed Iran to do the second most important thing that endangers the national security of nations around the world. The Iran nuclear deal allowed Iran to be able to make ballistic missiles, otherwise known as ICBMs, or you may have heard them called intercontinental ballistic missiles. That is how we, the United States and Russia and China, are able to threaten each other with nuclear weapons. It is a missile that is able to be launched from one continent, one country, and to reach the other side of the world. With the capability of having an ICBM, then it is possible for Iran to threaten New York City, or Los Angeles, or Chicago, or Miami, or any other place in the world. And that is absolutely allowed under the Iran nuclear deal, that Iran is able to develop a ballistic missile that would then be able to threaten every nation in the world. And they were funded, with the sanctions being released, they were able to fund that research, which is an essential element. Because even if they knew how to make a nuclear bomb, they wouldn't be able to get it anywhere in the world unless they had a missile to be able to deliver it. That's the thing that's important. It's a two-part package. Yes, they have to be able to make nuclear weapons, but they also have to be able to deliver that weapon, that bomb, to somewhere in the world to be a threat. And the Iran nuclear deal gave them that opportunity and funded global terror at the same time to distract the world. Again, these are facts. This is history. This is confirmed. BBC, CNN, the New York Times. These aren't things we're guessing about. These are things that were happening in our recent past. So we had something that we wanted to say about that. We want to discuss this with you. And in fact, in May of 2018, we did have an audio podcast in which we were discussing the Iran nuclear deal and a decision by President Trump to take America out of that and to re-engage, to restart the sanctions that prevented global terror around the world. And this is what we had to say at the time.
But I have yet to see where we have a reason why we would want to be involved in this deal, because it's just not good for us. There's no positive there. When we have the Prime Minister of Iran, we have the Ayatollah of Iran saying death to America, that they want to kill us, that they're going to go forward with their nuclear weapons program, that the Iran nuclear deal didn't prevent them from being able to move forward with the nuclear weapons. Why in the world are we going to be in that deal? What benefit does it have to us? I mean, John Kerry's going over to save the deal for what? The Iranians themselves are saying that they believe that that deal allows them to kill Americans. Okay? I think I wrote that up on it was my article on July 26th of 2015, that, that this is a skeptical deal. We have to be skeptical. There is nothing positive about it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the time in 2015 had mentioned that he thought that the Iran deal has two paths to the bomb. One, if they keep the deal, the other, if they cheat on the deal. And it's always important to understand, Iran has lied to us many times. They're moving this forward every time. They're continuing to move forward with nuclear weapons. We've seen nothing that stopped them. And the nuclear deal did not prevent it. I mean, it left them with centrifuges. It allowed them to work on being able to have missiles that are capable of hitting Europe, Israel, and America. That's what they're developing. And we want to keep that deal for what reason? I mean, seriously, folks, Where is the benefit here?
So even in 2018, we were asking the question, where is the benefit? And that's a very important question because we never saw a benefit, not under the Obama administration, not under the Trump administration. We saw an increase in global terror. We saw more people die. We saw that the United States was funding this. We saw that Iran continued to state that they wanted to destroy America. They wanted to destroy Israel. They wanted to kill anyone who did not believe what the Ayatollah believed. That's a problem. And that's something that never changed. But yet we were told by the Obama administration, by progressives and by Democrats, that we need to re-engage in the Iran nuclear deal. That for some reason, this would be a benefit to the United States, even though we factually saw it provided no benefit and no assurance of safety going forward. It was appeasement. That is true. It was an appeasement. It did appease and appeal to Iran. It gave them something to look forward to, but it gave no assurance of safety. And in fact, we wanted to speak about it more. And in May of 2019, we decided to speak about it a little bit more.
In fact, socialism and communism are responsible for more deaths in the world in the 20th century than any other cause combined. In terms of war, in terms of nuclear bombs, in terms of, you put it all together, more people have died at the hands of socialist and communist governments than every other form of government and every other war that's out there. And yet we're seeing more Americans say that that's a great idea. And you know who's happy to hear that? You know who's looking forward to that? Iran. Iran is happy about that. Because as we see in the news, reported on the 22nd, yesterday, May 22nd, by Reuters, Iran youth, the article's title is Iran Youth Will Witness the Demise of Israel, American Civilization. This comes from the Ayatollah of Iran. So here's a problem. Here's a big, big problem. Iran wants to kill America. Iran, who believe, along with Mr. Lind, John Lind, and the Taliban, and the Al-Qaeda, and ISIS, believe that Americans having freedom is evil, and therefore you need to be killed. Notice I didn't say that Republicans or conservatives are evil, not libertarians are evil. No. They said Americans. So that means progressives. That means liberals. That means Democrats. They want to kill us all. They don't see a separation. They don't see a division. They don't agree with the political differences. They see us all as Americans, period. Stop. And that we all deserve the same death penalty. That is what they believe. That doesn't come from a political ideology. And just because you may be a kind-hearted liberal progressive and think that, there should be a hierarchy of the micro categories and that people who happen to be transgender are more important than people who happen to be white or male or straight or some combination of those things. No, they don't care about that. They would kill. Iran actively and repeatedly and consistently kills transgenders, gays, and people that they don't agree with, whether you happen to be male or female, especially women. They believe in raping them, killing them. This is what their government does.
And think about that. In 2019, we had the Ayatollah of Iran saying death to America, that they want to kill Americans, that the youth of Iran in 2019 will grow up to see the death of the United States and, of course, Israel as well. And I doubt that our allies in Europe, whether it be France, Germany, any of the European nations, the United Kingdom, I doubt they would be left as safe. Once the United States is out of the way, once Israel has been removed from the face of the earth, I don't think that the Iran would stop. And this is what they told their youth. This is the program that they are giving to the next generations of Iranians. And once again, they have confirmed that they are looking to find a means to eliminate entire countries. And it has no difference on what your political preference may be. In watching this right now, as we recap history that has actually happened, as we recap this history where we have seen consistently in 2013, 2015, 2019, we have heard Iran say they will make a nuclear weapon, they will kill Americans, they do not make a differentiation on your political preference. If you are a progressive, you are as much of a threat to Iran as a Republican or a libertarian. They don't see a difference because you believe in people being free. In fact, I would be more fearful for the more socialist-leaning Americans, those who believe in socialism, because Iran absolutely disagrees with transgenders. It absolutely disagrees with the rights of gays. It disagrees with the rights of women to be able to drive, to be able to read, to be able to have positions of power. The things that we know, we keep hearing from the progressives are their mainstays. These are the things that they go to on a regular basis, that this is how they appeal on an emotional level to American people and around the world. And Iran despises every aspect of that. And that's one of the reasons they want to kill every single American. So it's not about your political beliefs. That isn't going to spare you. And this situation gets worse by the minute as we understand the history and what that's going to lead to in our future. Let's take a look at what we see with what has happened. Going to May 28th, just a few days after Iran had promised its youth that they would live to see America being destroyed, we then had, on May 28th of 2019, we had this from Senator Dianne Feinstein. Senator Dianne Feinstein was identified as being in contact with Javad Zarif. And again, who is that? Javad Zarif is the individual, here it is, from 2016, who is the foreign minister of Iran, who said that Iran would continue to enrich nuclear materials and that they would research and develop a nuclear weapon no matter what the Iran nuclear deal said. And Senator Dianne Feinstein was speaking with him. And this is what this entailed. Dianne Feinstein was reached by Iran via Zarif, and they started having comments. Now, the interesting thing here is when Dianne Feinstein's communications director was asked about it, he says he can't comment on who the senator does or does not speak with. Actually, he can. He is the communications director. He would know if she's speaking with Iran. And we see that Dianne Feinstein later in the day came out and mentioned, as I quote, "A war isn't necessary to solve a problem when both sides want a solution. I urge Secretary Pompeo to reach out to the foreign minister Javad Zarif, who I know doesn't want to see conflict with the United States." So essentially, Senator Tom Cotton comes out and he makes a comment that the United States, he supports President Trump and he wants Iran to back down. That their ambitions with the nuclear weapons, which were not prevented by the Iran nuclear deal, and more importantly, the missile development to create an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, which is the weapon necessary to get a bomb from Iran into the United States. That is their number one effort because they can create a nuclear weapon in less than a year. The question is, that isn't the problem for Iran. The question and problem for Iran is getting that nuclear weapon to the United States. They don't have a missile that could do that. The Iran nuclear deal did not prevent them from developing a missile that could bring that nuclear weapon to the United States and therefore threaten us. That is what is critical to know about the Iran nuclear deal. It allows them to create intercontinental ballistic missiles, which is the problem. That's the big deal. So we see that Senator Cotton takes a position along with President Trump on a strong defense of the United States. Iran reaches out, presumably reaches out to Dianne Feinstein, or Senator Feinstein reached out to Iran. It's unclear which way that happened. And in response, and says, hey, how do you feel about this? What's going on? And their response from Iran is, oh, we don't want to have a war. They've always said they don't want to have a war. They've also always said that they want to kill every single American, Democrat, liberal, progressive, or anyone else. They want to kill all of America, period. Our existence is a bane to them in general. So she comes out, and now she is now taking, by this statement on May 16th, Dianne Feinstein is now taking the position of Iran. She is being the mouthpiece for the Ayatollah of Iran. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine this history, which some people may not be familiar with? This is history. This happened. A United States senator was engaging in international discussions, diplomacy, policy, international policy, with a foreign leader, representatives of a foreign nation, and was trying to negotiate on their behalf. Dianne Feinstein is advocating for the best interest of Iran, not the United States, not the state of California, but for Iran and the Ayatollah of Iran, a nation that has said consistently that they want to destroy America, all Americans, of every political faction and every religious belief and every sexual preference you could possibly imagine. And she did this behind the backs of the Trump administration. Well, why in the world would she do that? And how does that help America? How does that create more peace? Because Iran says, well, we're not going to be at war. No, they don't want a war. They want an eradication. It's called a jihad. They want to remove the existence of the American people and the Israeli people and probably all of Europe as well. And yet we have Senator Dianne Feinstein, who couldn't bother to take the time to look back to 2016 and see that the very same person she was talking to, the very same person who's telling her, no, we want to be peaceful, is the very same person who said, oh, we're going to make a nuclear bomb. Are you kidding me? And this is what the Democratic Party has been advocating for. This is what they have been pushing forward. In 2013, 2015, 16, 19, they are continuously saying, well, we will get peace. We need to appease Iran. We need to make a deal with Iran. We have to be friendly with Iran, as Iran has consistently said to their face internationally, oh, and we want to kill you. We want to kill each and every one of you. Give us the money, give us the ability to increase global terror and to kill you, to make ballistic missiles so that we can kill you. This is the Iran nuclear deal. This is the environment that the Iran nuclear deal was created under. And then in 2020, we continue to talk about this issue.
Now, we know this is something that's happened before under President Obama. I think it was 2015 with the Green Movement during the Arab Spring. And at that time, President Obama ignored them completely. The movement failed, and we have the continuation of the current regime of Tehran with the Ayatollah. What has happened now, though, is that these very same people, many of them from the same Green Movement, that are looking for democracy in Iran, have come out and they have praised President Trump for standing up to the Ayatollah. They have renewed strength and energy in trying to get democracy in their nation. And this is a great thing. Now, Iran, for its part, the government of Iran, the Ayatollah, has decided that the answer to this is shoot people. And they have the government, the police, have been reported to have shot protesters in Iran and Tehran and several of the cities to stop people from protesting, which is horrendous. President Trump, for his own part, has said to Iran, it's great that you're not attacking Americans, and you better not attack Americans, but also stop attacking your own people. So he is doing more than what we've seen from President Obama in the Green Movement by actually addressing the fact that there are Iranians who want democracy and not the global terror that is, and when I say global terror, supporters of global terror that Iran has done.
Can you imagine that? Because we can. And again, this is history. This is from January of 2020, before the world became highly distracted. So we know. And again, going back in time, 2015, what was the United States, when the United States was trying to put together the Iran nuclear deal, President Obama willfully ignored the moderate movement in Iran, those people who are looking for freedom, just like we have seen the Obama administration and the Biden administration completely ignore the people in Hong Kong that were asking for freedom. They were asking for democracy. They were trying to break away from the oppressive communist rule of China. And now we have President Obama failed. President Trump succeeded. He pushed back against Iran. He forced the Ayatollah to not be able to, he caused the Ayatollah and Iran to not be able to expand on the global terror that they wanted to increase. And he pushed back their ability to create ballistic missiles. This is a positive for the world, and it encouraged the Democrats, the moderates in Iran, to seek democracy. So that's a benefit. So in not having the Iran nuclear deal, we encouraged more Iranians to try and seek democracy. We diminished the ability of Iran to spread global terror, and we endangered the oppressive rule of the Iranian government because we weren't part of the Iran nuclear deal, and we weren't allowing them to tap into hundreds of billions of dollars that was being used to fund global terror and to kill women and children around the world. You would think that would be a good reason. We now have a historical basis. We saw what happened under the Obama administration with the deal. We saw what happened under President Trump without the deal. And we had the opportunity, but we knew that there were problems. There were people like Senator Dianne Feinstein that were working with Iran against the best interest of America, that they were actually advocating for Iran against the interests of global peace because it was political. But she wasn't the only one, and God help us, she wasn't the worst. Because we then found out on April 27th of 2021 from the, we read this in Politico and from the New York Times, we found out about this story, which you have not heard about since. More than just a controversy, there are claims of treason that has been done. And I want to be very clear. Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska has said, people are talking about treason, and I don't throw that word around a lot. Why would anyone claim that John Kerry, a former Secretary of State of the United States, a former member of Congress, why would they claim that he is a treasonous individual? That he has betrayed the national trust and security of the United States, and by that, also the rest of the world. Well, it's been revealed by the New York Times on Sunday that the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said that John Kerry told him that Israel attacked Iranian assets in Syria, quote, at least 200 times, end quote. Zarif added that he was surprised that John Kerry would reveal that sensitive information to him, according to audio that the New York Times had in its possession. And this is a story that died almost immediately after it came out. We know for a fact that John Kerry, or rather we should say, it has been reported by the same Iranian foreign minister that was involved with the Iran nuclear deal under the Obama administration and helped to orchestrate the freeing of the release of assets of sanctions against Iran and hundreds of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in cash for Iran. The same foreign minister that said at the same time that Iran would create a nuclear weapon because Iran wants to destroy America and it wants to destroy Israel. The same foreign minister that then went to Senator Dianne Feinstein behind the backs of the American government and used her as their advocate to try and get the Trump administration to stick with the Iran nuclear deal that had benefited Iran alone and allowed them to increase the net global terror in the world. That same foreign minister now tells us that John Kerry was voluntarily reaching out to him to give him state secrets that affected our allies in the Middle East and affected the lives of untold numbers of people. That John Kerry was there promoting, and he was there doing this to help promote the creation of the Iran nuclear deal, to bring the deal back. This is in 2021 under the Biden administration. Under the Biden administration, this is what we see. So the Democrats have gone back. They are returning to a deal, and they're trying to reignite a deal that has no benefit for the United States, that they have gone behind the backs of the United States to push this deal because it politically looks good, because appeasement sells really well in the newspapers, because it sounds like peace, but it isn't peace. Ask the British about this. Ask the people in the United Kingdom about how well appeasement actually works. But we have John Kerry committing acts of treason. We have Senator Feinstein acting in the best interest of a foreign government. Does this sound like General Miley as he calls up China to tell China whether or not the United States is going to be taking actions to aid and benefit the Chinese Communist government? Does it sound like the same thing? Because that's treason too. And this is all in the hope to be able to create an Iranian nuclear deal that doesn't protect anyone in the world. And the Iranians know it, and they know that the Biden administration is so weak. They know that the Biden administration is so desperate to get a win after the rout, the absolute embarrassment of losing to the Taliban in Afghanistan, in abandoning 450, if not several thousand Americans in the hands of the Taliban, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda, after the failure of the U.S. economy, after essentially the failure of everything that the Biden administration has done and the violation of every promise that they have made, they're desperate for some kind of a win. And nothing is a better win for progressives than to hear the words peace. And Iran is using that to their advantage because since the Obama administration turned their back on the Iranian people, since the Joe Biden administration is turning its back on the Iranian people, the hardline elements of Iran have taken over and have made it impossible for Iran to become a more moderate, less deadly nation. And in fact, we know, and he is a significant hardline militant in the Iran government. And he has taken the position that it is non-negotiable in terms of Iran's ballistic missile program, and that the United States is believed to be so weak that they are stating that the U.S. is obligated to lift all oppressive sanctions against Iran. Effectively, Iran wants no hand-holding. It wants the ability to increase its terror, the reach of its terror through missiles around the world, and they want that funded by the United States for the promise that they would not build nuclear weapons, although the Ayatollah Khomeini has consistently stated in 2015, 2016, and since that Iran will continue to make nuclear weapons, and that we have seen many times for decades where Iran has made promises to the United States and the UN and then has turned around and broken those promises. So there is a new hardline leadership. The prime minister, the current and new prime minister of Iran, Mr. Raisi, an individual who is known for his attacks, his actions, his war crimes against Iranian people after the Iraq-Iran war, where he killed his own people. He is now in charge of Iran. He is the prime minister of Iran, second only to the Ayatollah. Individuals who have already said they want to see the death of America, the death of Israel, and they have no goodwill towards anyone in Europe. And this is the situation we are finding, that they have now looked at the United States, looked at the weakness, looked at the Biden administration's failure and desperation for a political win to salvage its political hopes in the 2022 midterm elections. And they're saying, great, then the United States has to lift all of the sanctions before they will even have a conversation, that they have the upper hand, that the United States is too weak to negotiate. A comment that we heard from China earlier this year. Yes, China has already said the United States is too weak to give any commands, and that the United States has to listen to other nations. We got scolded by China back in March. Now we're getting scolded by Iran, and this was just in June. And they know that they have an upper hand because the Biden administration with Kamala Harris is failing in every aspect. And they need a political win to be able to survive the 2022 midterm elections. And they are using that to try and get the sanctions. The one thing that is preventing an increase in global terror around the world, just as it did in 2016, they're sitting there saying, you have to lift all these sanctions. Joe Biden was there. He was in the Obama administration. He was all for lifting sanctions in the past. Why would Iran think that Joe Biden wouldn't do what he has already done? Why do they believe he wouldn't support what he has already supported in the past? That he has the same staff that have been pushing to be able to lift these sanctions since 2016. Why would they believe that they can't get the sanctions lifted, all for the mere promise that they won't make nuclear weapons, as they declare to their people and the world that they will make a nuclear weapon and that they will kill the United States. Now, I've said all of that, 45 minutes, to bring you to today. And this is important, because in 45 minutes, you have learned over 6 years of history about what Iran is actually doing, what they have actually done, what they have actually said. And we have learned what actually happened in the Obama administration and in the Trump administration. We know for a fact when global terror increased, when it decreased, and what caused that to happen. That is the Iran nuclear deal, and the release of these sanctions increased global terror and made more people die in the world because of the Obama administration and the Iran nuclear deal. And then the Trump administration reduced that number by imposing those sanctions once again and breaking the Iran nuclear deal. This is a reality. It is factual. There is no question about that. This isn't something to be disputed. This is the history. So we are now, today, looking at Iran, and this is what we see at this moment, that on November 23rd, Iran has been using drones to go out around the world and to deliver TNT. This is the type of global terror that they commit. That when we allow the Iran nuclear deal, this is what Iran is doing behind people's backs. They are enabling Hezbollah. They are enabling the Houthis in Yemen to be able to go out and to kill individuals. And they are doing this with their funding of not only providing rockets, but also providing drones that are allowing them to make assassination attempts. In the United States, the Biden administration has reportedly rejected Israel's activities against Iran nuclear facilities, believing that such actions will be ultimately unhelpful as they will only serve to encourage Tehran to upgrade those facilities in response. Quote, and speaking from Israel, quote, there is no doubt that a diplomatic solution is preferable, but alongside that, we need to have on the table the use of force, which is diplomacy by other means. This is from Gantz of Israel. He goes on to say, sometimes the use of force and a demonstration of it is able to prevent the need for stronger use of force. I think our Biden allies for the sanctions and other actions they have taken recently on this front in order to reach our shared goal. Iran must not go nuclear. This will lead to an unmitigated spread of its terror and will even lead to an arms race in the Middle East and beyond it. And let's be very clear, when he's talking about American allies and the sanctions that they have imposed against Iran, he's speaking about the Trump administration, not the Biden administration that is currently under discussions with Iran to release those sanctions and to increase global terror while allowing Iran to create a ballistic missile to deliver a nuclear bomb to America. We have to understand that this is very clear. That was on November 23rd. Going forward in time, we are looking at today. This is now November 28th, one day ago. Israeli military readying for Plan B if the Iran nuclear talks fail. I want you to be clear. When they say that the nuclear talks fail, it doesn't mean that the Iran nuclear deal doesn't go forward. They're talking about if it does go forward. Israel does not want these deals to go forward because they know that Iran is funding Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen. And we know for a fact that Iran, for its part, is looking to destroy Israel and America. These things are known. In fact, we know this specifically because on November 28th, yesterday, the Iranian Brigadier General Abolfazl Sakarchi, I know I got the name wrong, stated, quote, we will not back off from the annihilation of Israel even 1 millimeter. We want to destroy Zionism in the world. This is what Iran thinks. This is what their government, their military think. This is what they are after. They want to destroy Israel, the little devil, and America, the big devil or the greater devil. They want to destroy us, and they want to build nuclear weapons. Iran's regime seeks to build a nuclear weapon. We have to understand this. This is what they are saying on November 28th. And on November 29th, as reported by the New York Times, Iran insists on immediate lifting of sanctions after the nuclear talks resume. This is day one, November 29th, the day one of the sixth round of talks about the nuclear weapons in Iran and their ability to create a nuclear weapon. And according to the New York Times, who quote, but an important step to keep the negotiations alive, Iran agreed to resume talks on Tuesday in one of three working groups established in earlier rounds, on which sanctions would eventually be lifted by the United States. The other two working groups on the nuclear issue itself and on implementation and sequencing of each country's actions in the events of a new deal will not resume Tuesday. Iran is going back to talk about getting the sanctions lifted, the very same sanctions that allowed them to increase global terror, to be able to impact and kill more moms and children around the world. That's what they want. They want their money so that they can go out and kill more people like they want to kill Israel, as they have actually said, that they want to destroy Zionism. They want to annihilate Israel, and that takes money. And that's what they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the nuclear deal. They don't want to talk about ballistic missiles. They want to talk about getting their money so that they can turn around and destroy Israel and then the United States. This is the reality of the Iran nuclear deal. This is made as clear as it possibly can from news sources, from the New York Times, the Israeli news, all the way going back to CNBC in 2015. This is not a surprise. This isn't something that you should be shocked about. This is not what you are being told by the news media. As they talk about the sixth round of talks with Iran about the nuclear deal, they're not telling you about the terrorism that Iran is promoting and is looking to expand on if the nuclear deal goes forward. They're not telling you about the ballistic missiles that Iran is absolutely committed to creating. They're not telling you that Iran, regardless of what they say, whatever deal they make, plans to make a nuclear weapon, and that they are looking to make a ballistic missile to be able to attack the United States directly with that nuclear missile. You have been listening now for just about an hour. You now know as much as probably most of the Biden administration, at least as much as Kamala Harris, on what is going on with the Iran nuclear deal. You're going to be told over the next several days that the Iran nuclear deal is a path to peace. You're going to be told that we need to appease Iran so that there will be more peace. You're going to be told that this is part of the brilliant international strategy of the Biden-Harris administration. And we will tell you that this is nothing more than rehashing a bad idea from the Obama administration in 2013 that became reality in 2015 and increased the net global death and terror because of it. You may not like President Trump, and you don't have to, but you cannot deny the fact that when we broke the Iran nuclear deal and we reimposed sanctions against Iran, we made the world safer. The Biden administration, with Kamala Harris and the help of Senator Dianne Feinstein and the possible traitor John Kerry, are about to reverse that. You're going to be in more danger in 2022. If this Iran nuclear deal goes forward, hundreds of billions of dollars will be given to Iran, and we will see the Houthi rebels, which are backed by Iran, in Yemen, will become more dangerous. We will see that the dangers in the Middle East will grow. We will see more attacks in France, possibly in the United Kingdom, and we will see more ballistic missile tests to endanger the United States and Israel. That is the fact. Your future within Iran nuclear deal is less peaceful and more in danger than ever before. But you may disagree. You may think that in the last hour we have missed some of the information, that we have missed the history, that we have failed to report some essential item. And if you do, we wish to hear that. Please leave us a comment. Tell us about that. Perhaps you think that we have misunderstood the direct statements from the Ayatollah Khamenei and the Prime Minister of Iran, Mr. Raisi. And if we have, please tell us how we have. Please show us the quotes that counter what we have said. If you think that we have misstated the direct statements of Senator Dianne Feinstein, please show us other statements that refute what we have said. But no matter what you think, we look forward to hearing from you. And we hope to see you join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we do a live stream with you, talking about this and other issues that are important to you and around the world, because your voice matters, your free speech matters.